Ah, see? You know what that last part of the war was. How do we defeat Japan? So, the spring of 1945 is here. The Soviets have promised to attack Japan. We're closing in on Berlin, and FDR kicks the bucket. Dead. Done. So, we are going to have to figure out how to defeat Japan without our president that's been leading us throughout this entire process of the Great Depression and World War II. It's going to fall on President Truman to do that now. President Truman was the vice president, and Harry Truman becomes the president when FDR dies, and he's got to figure out how to do it. And his first task is going to get us close enough to Japan to figure out if we can even invade. So we're going to look for an island that's really close to Japan, and we find one in Iwo Jima. And we're going to attack Iwo Jima, and the goal here is to get enough supplies and air bases close enough to Japan that if we have to invade, we can use Iwo Jima as a launching point. It is tremendously catastrophic in terms of a battle. It shows, again, an enormous loss of men at Iwo Jima. And, 6,800 in only a couple of days. The loss of men is catastrophic. Now, we're not the only side that's losing enormous amounts of men here, because we remember, as we talked about before, the Japanese are willing. They are willing to fight to the death. They will do whatever it takes to continue to fight and try and win. So we're going to try and break their spirits. We begin to do something to Japan called firebombing. We're going to use something called napalm. I want you to imagine kind of Vaseline. You know how sticky it is, and you just can't get it off your hands if it's on your hands, right? And mix that with gasoline, and then light it on fire. So now essentially you've got this paste that is lighting you on fire that you can't put out. That's napalm. And we firebomb Tokyo and destroy 250,000 buildings in an evening. We killed 80,000 people in only a few days by firebombing a city. Women, children, civilians, we destroy them. We firebomb 66 other cities in an attempt to break their spirits. And the Japanese won't quit. They won't surrender. We have to prepare to invade and potentially look at anywhere between 2 and 5 million American casualties. That's the actual quote, between 2 and 5 million American lives lost if we invade. Truman doesn't know what'll happen. Some Americans want Hirohito gone, right? Kill the emperor, get rid of him. Truman thinks Japan will never surrender if we take him out. We just don't know what to do. So we're preparing for an invasion, demanding Japan surrender, but they won't. So we turn to something that we had developed in secret. Now, you see, you have to go back in time here a little bit. We discover in 1939 that the Germans had started to develop a new weapon. They were calling it an atomic bomb. And we don't want them to have this, obviously. So we begin in 1941 to work on an atomic bomb of our own, first in Chicago, then at a place in New Mexico called Los Alamos. We call it the Manhattan Project. And the concept of the Manhattan Project here is to build an atomic bomb for America. Top scientists all work on it, guys like Einstein, Robert Oppenheimer. This is so secret that even Truman, as vice president, didn't know. He doesn't find out until he's in office as president. So Truman hears about this, and he realizes this could be the weapon that breaks Japan. But he's got to really kind of weigh the options here. If he uses the atomic bomb, one bomb can kill so many civilians, right? Do you do that or don't you do that? Of course, we've been firebombing, which kills tens of thousands of civilians. So that argument isn't really that hard for Truman to think about. The answer there is that every single one of these Japanese people will fight to the death. Men, women, children, old people, doesn't matter. So those loss of lives don't necessarily matter. Should we tell Japan we have this weapon? Give them a chance to quit first, maybe? Do we let them keep their emperor if they quit before we invade? Do we just drop it on them by surprise? What do we do? Or do we not drop it at all? Because once you drop this weapon, you can't put that genie back in the bottle, and we're going to do some work on this. Once you kind of open up this can of worms and you show the world what's possible, you can't go back to a world without nuclear weapons. Truman ends up deciding to threaten Japan first. He says, we're going to prompt and utter destruction if you don't surrender. They don't. We dropped the bomb, the first one on Hiroshima, second one on Nagasaki August 6th and August 8th, or August 9th rather. It's huge devastation. 63% of Hiroshima is destroyed instantly. About 120,000 are killed. Thousands more later from radiation sickness. It's incredible. When the Japanese realized the extent of the destruction, they offer terms of surrender on August 15th, which is VJ Day. Which leads us to this final slide. Now that the war is technically over, who do you punish? Right? If we kill Hirohito, the Japanese people will revolt. So we leave him in power to prevent an uprising. But what about all these war crimes? Who do you punish? We put people on war, or on trial rather, for war crimes. And we end up putting 36 to death, 144 get prison sentences, 3 are acquitted, 18 Japanese are put in jail, 7 are killed. And we put hundreds and hundreds of others into prison camps for re-education to try and make them think that they're less Nazi or less militarist. But it is a very long and hard process for people to kind of close this war out. We're going to talk more about that in class if we have time, but I think for now you get a real feel for the kinds of sacrifices that people are going to make in war and how these wars in the Pacific and in Europe ended. So that should be good enough to close us out for Chapter 12, and we'll do more with this in class.